So my name's DJ Lambert. I am a Global Social Benefit Fellow from the 2020 cohort. I'm an econ and poli-sci major. I'm also minoring in math and computer science. And so data is in particular is my background. And I was positioned with Power originally, but then transferred to work with Smart Havens Africa in Uganda for my GSBF placement.
DJ, what are some of the things that you're interested in doing after you graduate?
So as of right now, I've applied for Fulbright, and that's mainly because I want to continue doing some kind of social impact work and applying my data analysis skills into that field. And now, Brooke, if you want to go.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. So my name is Brooke VanSant. DJ and I were partners for GSBF. So like you said, we were originally placed with a microfinance company doing solar irrigation in Nepal, and then we transitioned to working with Smart Havens Africa in Uganda. We'll both be graduating at the end of this year. I study economics and finance, but also have a background in data analytics. And after I graduate, I've accepted a job at Cisco, so that's where I'll be for at least a little while. But I really do want to work in the social field at some point in my career. Erika, if you'd want to introduce yourself next, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm Erika Francks. I graduated from Santa Clara in 2017, and I was a fellow in 2016 with Honorgy, which is a solar social enterprise in Calcutta, India. And in undergrad, I studied environmental studies and management information systems. So I was also kind of on the environmental data track. And immediately out of college, I worked at Accenture, and then I did a Fulbright, and now I am in grad school.
Very cool. Thanks. How about you, Rosella?
Yeah, my name is Rosella Chapman, and I graduated in Santa Clara in 2015. I was a fellow in 2014 with Anadeep and iMerit, also in Calcutta. And I currently work at Nike in Portland, Oregon as a category information analyst. Right out of Santa Clara, I got a job at Google in the legal operations department. And then I worked at Warby Parker in New York City before coming back to Portland just a couple of years ago. And I'm now also pursuing a part-time Master's of Public Policy degree at Portland State University.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing and for offering your time to talk with DJ and I today. We really appreciate it. We asked Erika and Rosella to come and talk with us because, as you might have picked up, both of them have done work both in the social space and in the corporate space. So we thought it'd be really great to get their perspective. So DJ, I don't know if you want to explain first, but we decided on this topic, the false dichotomy between corporate and social work, because DJ and I both have kind of this internal struggle that we worked out through the course of the fellowship. So DJ, if you want to explain a little bit about what that phrase means to you, that'd be awesome.
Sure. For me, this false dichotomy is how I'm torn between pursuing social impact work after college, after graduation, particularly working with social enterprises, and pursuing a more impact-based career. At the same time, I am pulled into a more corporate environment for example, its stability that it offers and the opportunities that a job in say a larger tech company can offer. And as I'm beginning the search for jobs after college, I feel that the decision I make in this next career that I choose is going to be very important in determining my overall trajectory. And so there's this overall fear that if whichever one I choose, I will be working predominantly within that one. And so I'm aware and becoming more aware that that is not an actual problem that I'll face, that I'll be able to move around, but still coming to grips with that and talking about it is really important for me.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I resonate with a lot of what you said, but I think for me, that choice felt like it almost happened my junior year because I was like, okay, the only way to get a job out of college, if you're a business student, is to get an internship at a corporation that's large enough that they have a program where they'll funnel you right through. And doing that means you can't do GSBF. So like right here, my junior year, I'm going to decide like if I'm going to do corporate, that's it. Like I'm going to do corporate. And the time to go do something like work in the field of a social enterprise or at an NGO is when you're broke and have no responsibilities the year after college. So like if I'm going to do it, this is the time to do it. So I need to decide like right now what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I really stressed myself out about the decision between the fellowship and the internship because it felt like I was planning my whole life out. So I actually called and talked to a number of fellows like Erika last year when I was going through this. And I was like, I don't know if you like ever felt like this. So I know that there are students who feel like me and DJ feel, but it's also been really interesting just talking to so many different alumni who have gone through GSBF throughout the course of this fellowship, who have done so many cool things, and some of them have been in explicitly impact roles the whole time, others have been in explicitly corporate roles the whole time, but I've been pretty surprised at the number of people who either have a corporate job and have some sort of like socially focused role within a large corporation, or who make the switch between the two quite often. So yeah, with that, just wanted to ask you guys both, when you were our age, did you feel this pressure at all, or what decisions were you thinking about when you were, deciding what you wanted to do after college? And how are you navigating that tension now? Because it doesn't just go away after you get your first job.
Yeah, I can go. So yeah, I also, I wasn't in the business school, so I didn't have quite the same pressure to like get a certain type of internship, but I definitely wasn't sure that I wanted to do GSBF before I started because I had done Global Fellows the year before and I was like, oh, it's like, am I just doing two of the same thing? But then kind of same situation, like had a lot of talks about it and decided to do it. And now like I really like even to this day in interviews, like talk about my GSBF experience. I think part of where this like false dichotomy comes from is this idea that like the skills aren't transferable between the two sides, and they really are. Like every time, I'm talking about, or like I'm interviewing for one thing, I'm talking about the other and vice versa. And like building the skill set where you've done both, I think is actually really unique and valuable and like shows that you can work in a lot of different environments. Coming out of school, I decided to go to Accenture because I kind of felt like it was easier to go from like a big corporate world job to a smaller social enterprise job later. And so it felt like it was leaving more doors open for me. But at the same time that I was accepting the job at Accenture, I was also applying for the Fulbright. So I was kind of like already trying to open the door back into social impact. So I guess like that's kind of how I view it, is like what's gonna give me more opportunities versus like what could potentially limit me. But I don't think the entire social impact space or the entire corporate space is necessarily doing either of those things. It's all about like what you're doing specifically like in your role and at your company.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the skills being really transferable. And as I was thinking about this, I was also thinking about how I think at this point, so many different sectors just overlap so much. And that like, regardless of where you want to work, having knowledge of another sector is really helpful. But this definitely did come up for me my senior year because most of my friends were in the business school and had job offers by the time we started senior year. And I was a political science major and I didn't want to go to law school. And so there was absolutely no set path of what to do. And I also graduated a quarter early. And so there was a lot of pressure to have a plan. And I'm a person that likes to have a plan. And for me, a lot of my decisions have also always been based on location. And I was really torn about wanting to stay in the Bay Area versus wanting to come back to Portland. And I ultimately felt that I could always come back to Portland, but that this was like an opportunity to use the doors that Santa Clara had helped open to be in the Bay Area, and there's so much opportunity there. So I initially started my job search in the nonprofit sector, but I was really torn between my political science background and my interest in politics and policy versus my experience with the fellowship. And so I ultimately went more in the legal direction because that was the opportunity that presented itself, and I felt really grateful for that opportunity. Knowing that I felt good about the company as well. And so, but I definitely reflected on that a lot because I was also speaking with the other fellows to see the different things they were doing, right? So it all worked out, but it was definitely a process of discernment that year.
Awesome. I'm kind of curious just how how the fellowship and lessons that you guys learned throughout the course of the fellowship played into your career paths later. I know you guys both like briefly mentioned what you're up to now, but what stuck with you like a couple years later once you had some, distance from the school and some, experience in a corporate setting? What made you want to come back, or like, was that always your plan? What was going through your minds?
Yeah, for me, like the experience I had as a fellow directly ties to pretty much everything I've done since then. So immediately out of school, I went into management consulting, and I was like definitely able to leverage the work we were doing as fellows to basically say like, look, I've consulted for the social enterprise with like very little structure, figured it out, delivered like high quality deliverables after, X number of weeks, whatever. So that was like, I didn't realize at the time that I was doing the fellowship how like perfectly that tracks with consulting. And so I think that's like a huge opportunity for any fellow if you want to go into consulting. Like it's very easy to make that connection. And then for my Fulbright, I mean, the reason that I was doing research on solar mini grids was because in the fellowship I got like really interested in that technology, and also got connected to the organization One Power in Lesotho through like conversations that I had in the Miller Center and like writing my senior thesis and stuff. So, and then now I'm in grad school for, it's called Design Impact at Stanford, but it's basically, it used to be their product design master's program, but now it's basically like design engineering for social impact problems. And so that also directly ties like kind of from, I don't think I would have been able to get into this program if I didn't have both, the corporate tangible skill background and also the social impact background. So it's kind of all flooded out of stuff I did in GSBF. And I don't know if I would have necessarily done any of those things if I wasn't a fellow.
That's awesome. I can't say that mine all connect as perfectly, but I think even off the bat, my experience with GSBF provided me a unique understanding of the technology sector and how that works abroad. And I think that was, and I think the like consulting experience and dealing with ambiguity was just really helpful and really good experience to speak to when looking at roles. I would say also like the fellowship, I think it really taught me how to do this process of thinking about where you are and what you want to do and what's important, because I think it's like a really iterative process, and I think it's like a really good skill to have to be able to do that throughout your career. And I also think it just made me feel that I need to feel really good about the company I'm working for, even if that's in the corporate sector. I need to support their values, and I need to be like morally aligned with what they're doing, which is always challenging with like really big corporations, right? But I think I hold them to a high standard, I suppose. And I think that GSBF just instilled this idea that we have to expect better of companies, and that we have to expect them to meet the needs of society and like look just beyond profit. And so I think we're seeing that even more now, and like I'm hoping that continually becomes a bigger part of society. But I think I just kind of go throughout my career trying to make decisions with that in mind.
That makes sense. So I ended up interning this summer at Cisco once it became apparent that we couldn't go to Nepal. But I was really surprised going into a company how much I actually like felt like it mattered. Like if I respected the leaders in the company, and if I felt like what they were doing was important, even if it was not something that's directly like socially focused. Cisco does networks, right? Like I couldn't even explain a network to you, but the way that they like have treated their people has always been really great. And it was interesting to me to hear stories of like Cisco's like extended leave policy and things like that actually mattering on like a human level. The best person on my whole team is at Cisco and has been at Cisco for like 25 years, because she had one manager one time who like gave her an extended leave for a year when she was going through really rough like personal circumstances. And the reason that she didn't leave and that the business still has her is because they've done right by people. So it was pretty surprising because I was like, oh, this isn't like social work. Like, I'm just not gonna feel like fulfilled here. But it was pretty amazing to me that I could still like really support a company even if it didn't have like an explicitly social mission. So I'm still learning in that respect.
Yeah, and I guess I'll quickly add on, like, yeah, I mean, I think how a company treats its employees, right, is, I mean, so important. Like, you can have good values even if the core of your business isn't focused on social impact, right? But I also think that when you're at big corporations, like, those corporations can also make changes on like a really big level, right? Like what Accenture does or what Google does, the standards they set for leave or sustainability, like those, like they hold a lot of sway, right? Especially in America, like those are the companies that those hold as much sway as some politicians, right? So I think like you don't want to underestimate the impact that like actually your work there can do, because those companies are such a huge part of our economy and our society.
Erika and Rosella, you both are now going to graduate school, and I know that Brooke and I are both interested in also one day going to graduate school to further our education. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to the timeline of how you envisioned yourself continuing your education after your undergraduate degree, and how that going to graduate school is going to continue to play a role in your journeys, how you see it impacting your ability to make impact in the future, and what value you think you're going to get out of it that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, so for me, I like coming out of undergrad was in no rush to go to grad school. I was like, I don't need to jump right into this. I kind of was in the boat of like, I need to figure out what I actually like doing and then, dive deeper. And I wasn't ready to like invest in more education right off the bat if I wasn't totally sure that that's what I wanted to be studying. So I actually didn't really deeply think about grad school very much, at least the first year out of undergrad. I mean, I was in a corporate role, so like MBAs were kind of on my mind. People were leaving for MBAs, like stuff like that. But I wasn't like totally sold that that was right for me. I know there are actually some really interesting MBAs that incorporate social impact stuff that are still interesting to me, but now I'm in a different program. So yeah, basically what happened was like I was on my Fulbright and kind of got to this point where I was like, I really feel like I need to design a new solution here, and like I don't necessarily have the background to like be able to design something new and have it be taken seriously and have it be rigorous, and like I don't have the frameworks to kind of do the human-centered design that I want to be able to do here, because best practices like weren't really a thing in the field that I was studying. So that's kind of where I hit this wall of like, okay, I think I need to like study something here. And so I started looking into programs, and like the one at Stanford is obviously great. And so it was kind of just this moment of like, this is the next thing that I need to do to be able to like continue doing what I'm trying to do. And yeah, for me, I mean, this is like a rare case, but like literally just found one program and was like, that's it. And if I don't get in, I'm just going to get a job and like continue, working until I find something else that I want to do. So yeah, mine was like very specific to like a need that I was like, this is what I need to do, and how do I get this done? So it's kind of a pivot moment for me where I'm like, I didn't have the skills or the education to design for off-grid renewable energy, and that is what I needed to do. So it was like a very specific fit. But yeah, I mean, there are a million different reasons to go to grad school, but for me, it was like, if I'm going to invest my time and my money, then it needs to be like what I definitely want to do.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. When I was graduating, I definitely considered it. I knew people in the political science program that were going straight to law school, which I think makes sense to do to start right on that track. But I was interested in the Master's of Public Policy degree at that point, but I felt like I didn't feel confident enough in that decision to commit the time and money at that point. And also a lot of people told me that if you're doing something that's not like grad school or med school where you really need the degree to practice, that it can really be helpful to have a couple years of work experience, and that you'll ultimately get more out of the program that way. So I opted to take the GRE within the first year after graduating, which was really helpful so that I could just have that as a resource. And then I actually didn't think I would end up going to grad school, just I felt pretty good about what I had been doing professionally. And then in the last couple years, I started to think more long-term, and I felt like my career could plateau in a way that I wouldn't be happy with, and that the trajectory wasn't exactly aiming where I wanted to end up. And so I was thinking 10, 20 years from now, what do I want to be doing, and what skills do I need? And I felt like it made sense to specialize in the area that I'd realized I was most passionate about. And so it's a pivot, but I think it's more of a slow pivot because I'm also doing part-time. And so it's really just like starting to build those skills and move like slowly into an area that I'm more interested in. And I think that will ultimately give me the most fulfilling career I can come up with.
I asked because early on in college, I thought that I would be going up to graduate school first thing after college. But then through Global Fellows and GSBF, I saw that there's real value in having a variety of experiences outside of education. And so, Erika, hearing your rationale for actually going to school because it's something you need in conjunction with experiences you had, that's something that I want to get more experiences like that, to have more of a rationale for moving on to graduate school. And so that was really awesome to hear.
Yeah, I think it also like helps you focus in graduate school if you have like a very specific reason for being there. Like in my program, they don't take anyone that just graduated because they want you to like have experiences that you're building off of and to have some sort of like focus or drive of like why you're there. Because you could generally study design or like generally study anything, but you're not necessarily like getting better at like, I don't know, a specific thing. So yeah, I think I highly recommend like working for a couple of years before going to grad school, unless it's like law school or med school where, you know, that's the next step to get to your job.
Interesting. I was wondering, Rosella, after you talked a little bit about your time at Warby Parker and Google and all these different things, it's, you know, you've worked for a substantial period of time in the corporate world, and now you're kind of shifting into public policy, which is a little bit more socially focused. So like, what advice would both of you guys have for students who like are going into corporate work that do have like an interest in social impact, but are going to be investing some time in less overtly socially focused roles? How do you like make the most of it? What do you like, what types of skills do you need if you're gonna be transitioning later on into something else? How do you enjoy your time there, even if it's not like explicitly what you're passionate about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think part of me really thought I would be able to get into like the corporate social responsibility of a company, which I think is an awesome place to be and a worthy goal, but those tend to be like also really niche, small parts of companies a lot of the time, and it can be hard to be there earlier in your career, right? But I think learning about those early on is great, and just like familiarizing yourself with that part of the company. At Google, I had the opportunity to do a 20% project, which if you know what that is, you devote like a portion of your time, right? And I was able to work with the team that was doing like evaluating the educational programs that Google provides for free to schools. And so like that was a really cool way where I felt like, okay, my day job isn't necessarily focused on impact, but there are other parts of the company I can get involved in. There's always volunteering opportunities. There's also volunteering opportunities like outside of work. I think like, you know, you can look at the scope of life, right? It's not just your job. Some people are going to commit themselves and their entire body and soul to their work, and others won't, and they'll achieve impact in another way, right? So I think there's like so many ways to look at it. But I also think if you view it as acquiring skills that you can then later use, like to Erica's point of like starting kind of in the corporate world and then knowing that like you can always go do something else later, I think. And I think that it can provide just like a really solid footing. And like you can get some really good experience that will just make you more capable for down the line.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I think like, yeah, the way that I see it is you kind of like can jump onto different things in your corporate job. So like I was on like an analytics team, but I also was like a co-lead for this partnership with an energy organization that Accenture was doing CSR stuff with. So you can like also kind of take leadership roles within kind of the impact space within your corporate company. Like all of them are going to have some sort of impact stuff going on, because I can't imagine that a big company in 2020 is not doing anything social impact related. But the thing is, like, some of that, like similar to CSR stuff, some of the impact stuff at Accenture was like, you have to be at like X level to be on a team that's doing, you know, consulting for social enterprises around the world. And I was like, well, ideally, like if I stay here, that's what I would want to do. But I am probably not going to stay for the 3 years that it takes to like get to that point. So I had like some informational interviews with people within the company that were doing that type of stuff to figure out like, okay, you know, should this be my long-term goal? Like, should I stay here and should I, you know, get to that point? And so you can also be kind of like interviewing around and saying like, okay, how are other, like, what are other people doing in the impact space here? Is it like worth it for me to try and pivot there? Or is there another way that I can be making impact? And then also like outside of work, again, like I personally think keeping connections with like all the GSBF people, all of the mentors you've had in that space is like super great, because as things pop up or as new opportunities open up, people think about you and people like reach out to you. Obviously we all, you know, see all of Spencer's posts all the time about new jobs and things like that, but like you can also get people personally reaching out to you and saying like, oh, hey, like I know you have this background and like there's this really cool job at this organization, or like someone needs a volunteer here. So also just kind of like keeping that social impact network alive, or like even like going to SoCap or like things like that, where you're still in the atmosphere of social impact, but you're not necessarily spending all of your time there.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of laughing because I thought this summer I was like, ooh, if only I could like get into the CSR world and I could get like hired into that, and that would be like ticket. And I talked to so many people in different roles in CSR, and what I learned is that there's like no one clear path to those jobs, and then people don't leave them often. So usually they don't turn up so often, but very cool people from all kinds of backgrounds. Like a lot of people had, you know, experience in the field or like had done Fulbrights or things like that. And then there were a few people even who were just in the corporate space and kind of came in through that door. So it was very interesting to hear all of their stories, but I did not get a role in CSR, but that's okay. Actually, somebody did reach out to me and they said, hey, like I remember we had a meeting and they were looking for somebody with a circular economy background. And I was like, oh, I've known some like GSBFs who took some classes in that. So even though it didn't work out for me, I was like, it's okay. Like they remember who I am, and you know, maybe someday this network will come back around and I'll be able to work on something like that. But it was very interesting. I think we're getting ready to wrap up, but just a few last questions. Where are you guys heading? Like, what did you ever see yourself revisiting your GSBF roots and working for another social enterprise or starting your own, or what's your kind of long-term plan?
For me, yeah, I definitely could see myself, you know, long-term in the social impact space. I think starting my own thing, I don't know if like that's honestly like my personality type is not to like stick with something for 30 years. So who knows if like I would have that type of commitment to anything, but definitely like consulting for social enterprises and things like that is exciting to me. Yeah, after grad school, like we'll see what happens. Basically the way that they describe this program is like a third of the people go into, you know, designing at corporations, a third of the people go into kind of more specific like social impact stuff, and a third of the people start their new thing. So it's kind of like any option is open, and like we'll see what makes the most sense when I come out of it. But ideally doing something that has impact that I am passionate about.
Yeah, so I'm currently exploring different areas at Nike, such as sustainability and social and community impact. And so really working to learn more about those and see if that aligns with what I'm interested in doing. But I'm also really interested in the nonprofit world, and so trying to learn more about that, and how they lobby for policy and how public policy can help them build capacity. So while I'm very passionate about public policy, I don't actually foresee myself going into local government, or probably not running for public office because I'm a little bit too shy for that. But I definitely would consider being self-employed or being some sort of independent consultant down the line. I think I just don't yet have the expertise to be able to do that, but I would love to do that down the line. And I think I would definitely try to circle back to social entrepreneurship in one way or another. But I'm currently thinking a few steps ahead, right? And that might be even a few more steps ahead. I think that I've always kind of been interested in a lot of different things and have struggled to be able to hone in on a direction. And so I think now that I feel really good about actually having committed to policy as my career path. And then there are just a couple different ways that could work out.
Rosella, Erika already answered this question, but would you ever see yourself starting your own social enterprise?
I'm open to it. I just don't have a genius idea yet. But there's just a lot of problems in the world that bother me. So if I can come up with a solution, yes, and I'll be the first to know.
I really admire the people that start social enterprises. It's just, I picture myself more like Erika, kind of afraid to tie myself down and also really afraid of failure. And social enterprises, it's a risky business. And so that's something that definitely scares me about that aspect of social entrepreneurship.
It's interesting. So Anne, who started Smart Humans Africa, who DJ and I have been working with the last few months, the reason why she started her affordable housing company was because her mom had to choose between like rent and school fees growing up. And so it's like a very personal issue to her. And I would say that it probably irritated her quite a bit too. So yeah, very interesting. I think she started the company because she saw an issue and had an idea. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys so much for spending some time chatting with us today. I know that DJ and I really appreciated it, but just wanted to thank you guys and wish you best of luck on your new endeavors.
Thank you so much. And we know it's late as well, and we appreciate your willingness to speak with us.
Yeah, thank you. This has been really fun.
Yes, of course. It's been really fun, and good luck to both of you.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where life takes you guys.
Yeah, us too.
We're very excited for any glimmer into the future.
I think we're all excited for 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, the year can only be better at this point.
Should be good. Okay, thanks again, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Good night.
You
Yeah.
too.